Hey guys, what is up? I'm now in, I believe, the fourth part of the Sengoku Jidai series by Kings and Generals. I'm really looking forward to just continuing this series. And before I do, if you want to watch the original video by Kings and Generals, the link is down in the description down below. And if you enjoy my channel content and you want to help me out in any way, shape, or form, feel free to please like, comment, subscribe, and maybe even consider being like a YouTuber Patreon member. Only if you're able to. Now, with that said, and now without any further ado, let's get to it, shall we? Let's watch more of Sengoku Jidai.
The war with the Takeda clan did not stop with Shingen's passing. A year after his death, Takeda Katsuyori, who had succeeded his father as head of the clan, invaded Mikawa. In June, he laid siege to the castle of Nagashino, whose defenses were commanded by Okudaira Sedamasa. Katsuyori's campaign had started with the best omens, for he had even secured the assistance of Oga Yashiro, the Daikan of Mikawa, who was in charge of financial matters in the area and wielded significant authority. Yashiro's arrogance made him turn traitor towards Ieyasu, and he offered to help Katsuyori should he invade Mikawa by opening the gates of Okazaki Castle. Thus bolstered by this turn of events, Katsuyori marched into Ieyasu's land. Unbeknownst to him, Yashiro's betrayal had been discovered, and he and his family had been captured and had met a very gruesome end. Despite taking care of the traitorous Yashiro, Ieyasu knew that he could not take on the larger Takeda force alone, and so sent for Oda Nobunaga, who resided at Gifu, to assist him. Meanwhile, the situation at Nagashino was getting more dire by the day. Katsuyori's frontal assaults against the castle's walls had failed, but food was running out fast, and Sadamasa's men wouldn't be able to hold much more after that. This was the message Torii Tsunemon, one of the castle's defenders, brought to Ieyasu after slipping past the Takeda lines one night. Tsunemon then made the return journey, carrying with him the promises of both Ieyasu and Nobunaga that they would make haste to relieve the siege. Unfortunately, this time he was captured by the Takeda soldiers, who became aware that someone had escaped the castle and tightened their defenses. Katsuyori offered a deal to Tsunemon, his life in exchange for aid in deceiving the castle's garrison into believing that no help was coming and they should surrender. However, when Tsunemon stood outside the walls, he shouted that their lord was coming to relieve the siege.
Okay, that's cool. Like I said, big respect for holding on to his integrity there.
As punishment for this brave act and firm loyalty to Ieyasu, Tsunemon was crucified by the Takeda.
Oh, dang.
With little hope of capturing the castle before the combined Oda-Tokugawa armies would reach him, Katsuyori held a war council with his generals. The older and wiser of them opted for a retreat back into Kai, but Katsuyori and the younger generals wanted to stay and fight, and so it was decided that they would give battle there. Staying true to their promise, Nobunaga and Ieyasu arrived on the evening of the 27th, 6 miles west of Nagashino at Shidahara, with a combined force of 38,000 men.
Oh, wow.
They quickly took up positions on the ridgeline behind a small stream called Ringogawa as a countermeasure to the feared Takeda cavalry.
I was about to say, okay, I was looking at the army composition right here, and I was like, they don't have no, actually, no, they do, actually. Okay, it's not like last time. They have cavalry in the rear, in behind the main line. Okay, so they have cavalry. So I was about to say, like, if they don't have any cavalry, I was thinking of ways that I could go against them. But yeah, any cavalry charge definitely seems like the stream. I'm not sure how deep these streams are, but if they can like affect the forward charge of the cavalry thing, that's a great natural, I suppose, advantage to slow down the momentum of a cavalry charge. And yeah, it seems like they have the numerical superiority from what I'm guessing, like 38,000. Yeah, that's quite a a big advantage. And I was thinking, like, they have to leave some people of their forces to continue the siege behind them, because if they just committed everyone, there's a chance that the defenders maybe could even sally out. We've seen that before and just attack, so they have to leave some people. So I'm not sure if this decision to fight is a good one at the moment, especially, you know, the disadvantage, I suppose, and maybe the geography might affect them. So I'm not sure if staying to fight is a good idea, but I'm having a feeling it's not going to be, but I guess we'll find out, huh?
Seeking to provide further protection for his arquebusiers, Nobunaga ordered the construction of a palisade with a few gaps here and there so as to allow possible counterattacks. His plan was to use rotating volleys of arquebus fire to decimate the Takeda's famed cavalry charge, while his spearmen would protect the missile troops.
It kind of reminds me of pike and shot in some ways. Though I'm not sure they're using pikes, but yeah, kind of like, you know, you have the arquebusiers, you know, doing the firing, and then you have them being defended. So again, there seems to be a lot of preparation for defeating the cavalry. There's the streams, there's the natural defenses here. It's like a frontal assault from this cavalry charge doesn't seem like it's gonna do well, if that's what they decide to go with.
On the dawn of the 28th, the Allied battle line stood as follows. The extreme right flank of the Tokugawa army was secured by 1,000 men, led by Okubo Tadao. His position was the only one not covered by the fence, but instead was only protected by some trees. Next to him were Osuka Yasutaka and Sakakibara Yasumasa, each in charge of 1,000 men as well. Next in line was the warrior who surpassed death itself, the famous Honda Terikatsu, who was leading a similarly sized regiment, while behind him stood his daimyo, Tokugawa Ieyasu, with 2,000 men. On the left flank of the Tokugawa forces, close to the center of the overall line, were Ishikawa Kazumasa and Torii Mototada, with 1,800 respectively, while behind them was Ieyasu's son Nobuyasu, in command of 1,000 soldiers. Next to Torii stood the 1st Oda contingent under Takigawa Kazumatsu. On his left, occupying the center of the Oda forces, was Nobunaga's star general Hashiba Hideyoshi, who had the honor of guarding his lord, who had placed his headquarters behind him. Next along were Niue Nagahide and Mizuno Nobumoto, while the rear was supported by Sakuma Nobumori. On the other side of the Rengogawa, Katsuyori split his army into 5 divisions, each numbering 3,000 men. One was left to continue the siege on the castle, and another would serve as reserves under his personal command. On the right flank was Baba Nobuharu, in the center was Naito Kiyonaga, and Yamagata Masakage was on the left flank. At around 6 AM, the Takeda cavalry charged towards the entrenched Allied positions, Masakage's contingent being the first to make contact, with the other generals following suit. Yet every attack had the same bloody fate, as Nobunaga's gunners mowed down Japan's finest cavalry with alternating volleys, though some modern scholars dispute this and argue that the Oda arquebusiers discharged their guns en masse instead. Those who escaped the bullets found themselves against a hail of blades from Oda and Tokugawa spearmen. On the Takeda right flank, Baba Nobuharu had made some progress, but was then met by a detachment led by Shibata Katsuie and Hashiba Hideyoshi.
Oh snap! They're going for this secret contingent for a sneak attack?
While the fight raged on the banks of the Rengogawa River, Sekai Tadatsugu with 3,500 men attacked the Takeda forces who were still at Nagashino.
Ooh.
They had secretly moved during the night and approached the besiegers from the rear.
Dang. Wow, that's awesome. Literally caught them off guard.
Watching Tadatsugu's assault from the walls of Nagashino, Okudaira Sedamasa gave the order for the garrison to sally out.
Oh, that's what I was talking about. Like, yeah, that's why he had to leave some of his men, because the risk of sallying out is always one when you're besieging and choosing to fight. But, man, this sneak attack, probably a move of brilliance, because it seems like they're having success, So it means they'll basically be surrounded on both sides. Oh, wow.
And despite being weakened from hunger and illness, they inflicted great damage to the Takeda troops. Back at Shidahara, Katsuyori decided to fully commit, ordering a general attack and throwing in the last of his reserves.
Yeah, he lost all his cavalry, by the way, which is... Meanwhile, there comes a point, kind of like with the whole reserves thing, where usually the army with more reserves probably, I've noticed, kind of like, usually will do much better, if not prevail. And he's committed everything. Meanwhile, they have not committed everything. So this is a really bad idea, man. The power of reserves is really powerful. Like I said, I've been playing Total War Rome 2, and you know, a lot of the times the way I structure my army of pikemen, mainly a center, one giant line of pikemen with you know, protection at the flanks, with swordsmen and, you know, shield bearer spearmen. And my reserves are usually, like, I've been playing the Seleucid Empire, my reserves are usually war elephants. And, like, once the enemy commits, and you have a reserve, it's easy to, like, perform actions, like a flank, or just go around, or plug in gaps. So, yeah, this looks like, there's no way they're gonna win. Yeah, like I said, I think the decision to fight was a pretty bad one, overall. Just everything worked against them.
Yet even these fresh troops weren't able to dislodge the Oda Ashigaru from their defenses. The bloody struggle between the two forces continued until 1 hour after noon, when Nobunaga gave the order for the Oda troops to fall back on the fences. This was the opportunity the battered Takeda soldiers waited for, and retreated on the road back towards Kai. Seeing this action, Nobunaga changed his orders, now shouting to his men to pursue their opponents. This they did, slaughtering and capturing many of the Takeda, some of which were prominent samurai.
Yeah, the Takeda, man, they just got wrecked. Oh my goodness. But yeah, my feeling was correct. This was a bad idea to have this battle.
In total, around 10,000 heads were taken that day by the Oda men. Among the dead were some of the most notable Takeda leaders, like Baba Nobuharu, Naito Kiyonaga, the Sanada brothers, and Yamagata Masakage. Negashino was a great victory for the Oda Tokugawa side, and gave Ieyasu plenty of breathing room, allowing him to go on the offensive and capture many fortresses. Though significantly weakened, Katsuyori and the Takeda were far from falling, and 7 more years of fighting awaited Ieyasu before he would finally be able to put down his opponent. Over the coming years, Hideyoshi would be at the forefront, fighting where Nobunaga needed him the most, like the siege against the warrior monks of Ishiyama Hongenji, or the Battle of Todorigawa against Uesugi Kenshin. But of these later wars in service of Nobunaga, there was one that would change Hashiba Hideyoshi's life forever: the Chugoku campaign against the powerful Mori clan of Aki province. The Mori and their allies controlled the western part of Honshu, and because of the narrow geography of the region, armies didn't have much room to maneuver around fortified positions. Combined with their military might, it meant that a war against the Mori would take many years, even for the most brilliant of generals. In 1577, Nobunaga entrusted this campaign to 2 of his best generals, Hideyoshi and Akechi Mitsuhide. Mitsuhide would advance with his forces along the northern Sanindo Road, attacking through Wakasa and Tamba provinces. While initially both men were successful, the difference in their caliber as generals would soon become apparent. Hideyoshi, who was a master at siegecraft and possessed of a silver tongue, continued advancing further west, albeit at
Yeah, Hideyoshi, like I mentioned, is someone who I'm keeping my eye on. Him and Ieyasu are like the 2 men that I seem to notice, who are possibly seem to be like rising and seem to have a lot of development. So, like I said, I've been keeping my eye on them, and they both seem incredibly competent. So I'm really actually looking forward to seeing more of the exploits of Hideyoshi, and how I have a feeling he's gonna succeed. Like, I feel like this guy's a rising star.
At a slow but steady pace, either by directly assaulting the castles that stood on his path or by bribing their commanders. On the other hand, Mitsuhide's progress came to a grinding halt at Tamba, where he faced stiff resistance. When Hideyoshi entered Harima province, he had a hidden ace, Kuroda Yoshitaka, better known in Japanese history as Kuroda Kanbei, a brilliant political and military strategist. Kanbei had realized the Oda, not the Mori, were the clan to bet on, and had offered his services to Hideyoshi and Nobunaga. He had even promised to act as a diplomatic mediator for the bloodless capture of Himeji Castle, which belonged to his father-in-law Kidera Masamoto. Himeji, which stands to this day, would indeed be turned over in 1580, and after remodeling it, Hideyoshi would use it as his personal residence. With Kanbei's assistance, Harima province was secured quickly, with Hideyoshi besieging any castles that defied him, the most important of which was Kazuki, on the western border of the province, commanded by Akamatsu Masanori. The castle would change hands the following year, as Hideyoshi had suffered a major setback, and did not have enough troops to defend it. Besho Nagaharu, who owned Miki Castle, had rebelled against Nobunaga, seemingly out of his hate towards Hashiba Hideyoshi and his humble origins, and perhaps due to a massacre committed by his troops against the garrison and the civilians of Kazuki. 5 months later, he was joined by Araki Murashige. In the face of such a danger threatening his rear, Hideyoshi had to return to eastern Harima and put down the rebellion. In 1580, he was finally able to take Miki, though not everything went according to his plan, as Nagaharu chose to commit seppuku rather than pledge his loyalty to the Oda. Meanwhile, Araki had managed to escape from the siege of Itami Castle, where he was held up, and had found refuge at the court of Mori Teramoto. With that matter settled, Hideyoshi was now able to continue his campaign westwards to Bizen province. He would do so without his close friend and chief strategist Takenaka Hanbei, who had passed away the year prior due to chronic illness. Thankfully, military action against Bizen was not needed. The daimyo of the province, Ukita Noye, who also owned the neighboring Mimasaka province, having witnessed the fate of Besho Nagaharu, was more than willing to submit to Nobunaga's rule. Therefore, Hideyoshi ordered him to resist any attacks from Mori Teramoto's forces, while he himself moved north to Inaba province to lay siege at the castle of Tottori, owned by Yamana Toyokuni, who promptly fled.
Yeah, this guy's going around. Look at all the yellow stripes. He's like, really setting the influence down. So like I said, like the dude's kind of on a roll right now. Holy crap!
Leaving command to Kukawa Tsuneye. Tsuneye, however, was a general directly under the service of the Mori clan, and was thus determined to hold Tottori to the bitter end. As offers of peaceful surrender fell on deaf ears, Hideyoshi would show a rare fit of merciless brutality. First, he drove the peasants from nearby villages into the besieged castle to impose a heavier tax on its food reserves.
Ooh.
Then he built towers every 500 meters.
Oh, that's so devious, but it's true. Basically, starve them out quicker. Oh dang, that's devious, but smart.
Along the perimeter of the castle, and bought all the rice produced by the province. He then simply waited for the garrison to starve to death. His arquebusiers shot anyone who dared to venture outside the castle, yet the garrison still refused to surrender. This lasted for over 200 days, until the besieged men were forced to eat their dead comrades.
Oh
it
my
was then
gosh.
that Tsuneye agreed to surrender and took his own life.
Dang. Holy crap, dude. 200 days and then cannibalism. Just...
Following these successes, Hideyoshi deemed it proper to visit Nobunaga and exchange gifts to stay on the Oda warlord's good side. Meanwhile, things were going well for Ieyasu, or at least seemed to be, as he had prevailed in Nagashino against the mighty Takeda clan, which, even without Shingen's leadership, was a formidable foe. However, the war was not yet over. Each side often conducted raids into the other's territory, but each time they retreated back without giving a decisive battle. It was during this time that tragedy struck Ieyasu's own household, with the cause being none other than his own wife. As we saw in the previous episodes about Ieyasu's life, his first wife, Lady Tsukiyama, was related to the Imagawa clan. Her husband's actions against Ujizane had cost her her father's life, something she never truly forgave him for. The chasm between the couple deepened after 1570, when Ieyasu relocated his quarters to Hamamatsu, while she remained behind in Okazaki, where her son Nobuyasu and his wife also resided. In her absence, Ieyasu would not remain faithful. It was not uncommon for the lords of that time to have many consorts, but Ieyasu's list of concubines was as big as a telephone book, and at one point he even had a child, his second son, with Tsukiyama's handmaiden. In contrast, Tokugawa Nobuyasu's marriage to Oda Nobunaga's eldest daughter, Tokihime, seems to have been relatively happy, despite reports that portray Nobuyasu as a rather unpleasant and unpopular man prone to anger and violence. The couple had 2 daughters together, but no son, something that displeased Tsukiyama Dono, and who, like a proper meddling mother-in-law, made sure Tokihime knew it. She was adamant that a lord must have a son, and it was therefore her son's duty to find.
I love the character that they mod. Is this like a mod, or sometimes I'm wondering, because I know that they have like Total War, like Shogun and whatnot, but I kind of like the character model of the lady here with the spear and stuff.
A woman capable of providing him with an heir. Nobuyasu, seeing the logic behind his mother's words, was easily convinced.
Ooh.
Therefore, Lady Tsukiyama arranged for him to take as a concubine the daughter of a samurai who was a former retainer of Takeda Katsuyori and who had been driven away from her home. Naturally, this created a deep divide between Tsukiyama and Tokihime.
Dang.
Alas, her plotting didn't stop there. Through a Chinese doctor called Gen.
Dang, she's getting involved. All of a sudden, I thought, like, okay, random minor character. But, like, this episode, she has stepped up, and now it's like, let me just decide to do meddle with everything. Wow. I actually love the drama. I love the drama, bro.
She began exchanging correspondence with Katsuyori himself, asking him to attack Nobunaga and her own husband. Unbeknownst to her, however, one of her ladies-in-waiting was related to one of Tokihime's, both likely having been sent by Nobunaga to act as spies.
Dang. Ruthless, bro. Then again, like, yeah, it's established that marriage is basically done. But dang, bro. Ruthless.
She managed to discover the incriminating letters, which soon found their way to her daughter-in-law's hands, and from there to the Oda clan's daimyo. While Tsukiyama Dono's involvement in the plot was undeniable, since this was her correspondence, it wasn't long before Nobuyasu's name was also implicated. But for that, Nobunaga would need further proof. This came in the form of Sakai Tadetsugu's testimony, who, when visiting Nobunaga to deliver some horses as a gift from Ieyasu, was asked if Nobuyasu had anything to do with the plot. Tadetsugu, likely out of personal grudge against the man, did nothing to save his lord's eldest son, and instead confirmed that he indeed was part of the plot.
Dang.
With proof of the scheme's existence in the form of Lady Tsukiyama's letters and Tadetsugu's testimony, Nobunaga messaged Ieyasu, informing him of his traitorous son and wife, and asking for Nobuyasu to end his life immediately.
Oh my god. What a pickle Ieyasu has found himself in, and to no fault of his own, mainly his family, his wife causing all this drama. Dang, bro. But yeah, it's true. He's kind of been like tight, or like in an alliance with, you know, with okay, wait. Yeah, Nobunaga. Yeah, I'm struggling with some of the names. I apologize. But yeah, he's been close with this guy. So like he kind of needs to continue being good because Ieyasu's already at war here. The last thing he needs is to piss off an ally that he's had for quite a while now and who's helped him, especially in his last great battle. So in a way, he kind of has to appease Nobunaga, right? Or at least find a way to keep him like as an ally. While at the same time, it's also his son that's the issue here. Like, I imagine he doesn't want to kill it or want his son dead. I don't imagine. So his eldest son, so... Oh, that's such a bad... Oh, that's complicated, bro. That's a really tough pickle to find yourself in.
If Nobuyasu was involved in the plot, or even if he had the faintest idea of what was going on, but by most accounts he was likely innocent. When Nobunaga's messenger reached Hamamatsu, Ieyasu was caught between a rock and a hard place.
No
On one
kidding.
hand, he didn't want to sacrifice his eldest son, whom he had groomed as his heir, and had shown great promise as a military commander.
Ooh.
On the other hand, he had to think about the good of his clan as a whole. And for that, he couldn't afford to lose his alliance with the Oda and incur Nobunaga's wrath.
Oh,
In the
yeah.
end, he placed...
Yeah, that's like I said, if he loses his alliance and they get angry, he would have his back against the sea, essentially, so...
the greater good over his son's life, and ordered for Nobuyasu to be placed under house arrest, first in Ohama and later in Futamata, where, at his father's order, he would commit seppuku. Ieyasu sent two of his...
Oh, that is hard. That is... Oh, that's so... Yeah, like I said, I understand. At least in the sense that he needs to keep this alliance. But man, to do that to your own... That's gonna be rough, bro. Oh boy.
retainers, Hattori Hanzo and Amakata Michitsuna, to act as observers, with the latter also acting as the Kaishakunin, assisting Nobuyasu in his path to the next life. Although Nobunaga had probably not asked any such thing, Ieyasu would also order the death of his wife, who was guilty beyond any doubt, likely out of resentment for having cost him the life of his firstborn son.
Yeah.
Therefore, one of Ieyasu's retainers was sent to Okazaki and took her head. A few days later...
My goodness. To be fair, she was causing problems, but... Yeah, to murder... To basically kill your own son and your wife, like... Man, these politics, bro.
Nobuyasu followed his mother. While still mourning the death of his son, Ieyasu also continued his war with the Takeda. In the following year, Ieyasu prepared to recapture Taketenjin Castle, which Katsuyori had seized from him during his invasion of Mikawa in 1575. To this goal, he constructed 5 new castles around Taketenjin and renovated the old Ogasayama fort, effectively cutting off the castle from any possible assistance Katsuyori could offer. Despite repeated attempts by the castle's commander, Okabe Motonobu, to offer other castles in exchange for Taketenjin to be spared, the siege continued until March of 1581, when the starving garrison sallied out to meet a heroic end. It's not very hard to imagine that Katsuyori's inability to assist his own vassal during the siege did not earn him many sympathizers. The divide between him and his own retainers grew even larger, when in the same year he constructed a new castle at Shimpu, proclaimed it his new capital and moved in, forcing his retainers to follow him. This was a deviation from the clan's traditional strategy, as Shingen did not favor static defenses. Both his generals and his soldiers viewed it as a sign of weakness and lost confidence in his leadership.
Oh, things are falling apart now.
Another blow to Katsuyori's authority came in the first month of the following year, when Kiso Yoshinaka, lord of the Kiso Fukushima castle in Shinano, revolted against the Takeda. Katsuyori took the field to punish his rebellious vassal, but made little headway. That following month, a much bigger threat presented itself, as Nobunaga declared an all-out invasion of Takeda lands alongside his trustworthy allies, Tokugawa Ieyasu and the Hojo of Odawara. As you may remember from our previous episode, the Hojo were traditionally allied to the Takeda until Shingen invaded Suruga and...
Yeah, the Takeda are falling apart, bro. Between that last battle and now they're getting jumped and the retainer, everything is falling apart.
Their political alliance was dismantled. Despite this, familial ties remained between the two families, as Katsuyori had taken Hojo Ujiyasu's daughter for his second wife, when his first wife and Nobunaga's adopted daughter, Toyama Fujin, died in childbirth. Still, Katsuyori made sure to drive a further wedge between his clan and the Hojo by supporting and allying himself with Uesugi Kagekatsu in 1579. Thus, by 1582, the Hojo had joined the long list of the people that wanted Katsuyori gone. The massive Oda Tokugawa army marched through Takeda lands. They faced little opposition, as Katsuyori's vassals preferred to flee or surrender than to put up a fight. Even some of his relatives, like Anayama Baisetsu, who was his cousin, decided to throw their lot in with the enemy. For those who remained true and resisted, such as Katsuyori's younger brother, Nishina Morinobu, only death awaited. Morinobu was in charge of defending Taketo Castle, which came under siege by the forces of Oba Nobutada, Nobunaga's eldest son, who also acted as overall commander of the Oda troops in his father's absence. Nobutada offered to spare Morinobu's life, but the entire Taketo garrison fought to the last man.
Ooh.
The fall of Taketo Castle led to the rest of the Takeda garrisons in Kai surrendering on sight. Meanwhile, Ieyasu himself made swift progress, capturing Kakigawa, Makino, Tanaka, Sumpu, and Manjudo in Kai. At the same time, the Hojo forces had reached Kai's eastern border. Katsuyori was trapped. Realizing his dire position, and knowing Shimpu's defenses were not strong enough to withstand a siege by such a large force, Katsuyori decided to flee the castle in early March, taking with him no more than 600 samurai and a few hundred women and children who were his kin. They first attempted to reach Iwadano Castle, whose lord Oyamada Nobushige had offered to shelter and help Katsuyori. But once they reached the mountain fort, Nobushige turned them away, having changed his mind and sided with Nobunaga.
Oh, that sucks so hard. Dude. Can I be honest with you? Like I said, like when I played my first campaign in Total War, it kind of is bringing me flashbacks, because my first campaign ended in total defeat. Like I had I didn't know how to administer food or morale, and so I couldn't sustain armies anymore. I picked a war with an enemy that I couldn't beat on the battlefield, and then as they were conquering my territory and I couldn't make peace with them, I was playing as Macedon. Athens, which was an ally of mine, immediately turned on me and declared war, and so did Sparta, and I just got destroyed, and my first campaign ended with everything being conquered. So I kind of relate when everything falls apart and then you just lose everything. This kind of is reminding me of that, though I'm not sure if I don't know, the writing on the wall says this is like the end of the clan. I mean, who knows, maybe they might continue somehow, but like the way things are going, bro, just they're getting jumped. I see them like kind of being partitioned or divided between these guys, these three other clans, kind of like Poland or something when it got partitioned. So I don't know.
Without a stronghold, Katsuyori's party made its way towards the Tenmokuzen Seiyunji Temple. However, their numbers were continuously dropping on the way as his men abandoned their lord to save themselves.
Oh.
In the end, Katsuyori's force numbered no more than 100 souls, more than half women and children. Among them were Katsuyori's sons and his wife, who chose to stay by her husband's side, despite his plea for her to escape back to her family in Odawara. On the 11th of March, the Oda forces, possibly alerted by nearby villagers, pinpointed their position and began their attack. Katsuyori's men had nothing left to lose, and knowing certain death awaited them, they fought bravely, inflicting many casualties. But their fate was sealed, and those who didn't die by their enemies' blades took their own lives. Katsuyori and his eldest son, Nobukatsu, stood side by side, and one after the other, they committed seppuku. This was the tragic epilogue to Katsuyori's life, and the end of the main branch of the Takeda clan.
Dang.
We return.
So, I'm gonna end the video right here. That seems fitting to end the video here, but dude, what? Wow. Again, the clan, had been very like powerful, and bro, they fell off hard. It's a very tragic end. Yeah, I'm gonna end this part right here, and tomorrow we're gonna continue, guys. So I'll see you guys tomorrow in part 5.